Good morning, good morning, good morning. I trust that you are well today. It's time for another episode of Midweek Motivation Live. With me, of course, your host, Patrick Lee. We had a date for 10 o'clock, right? Every Wednesday morning here at Midweek Motivation Live, your midweek reset for faith, focus, discipline, and purpose in life. Today's show is going to be a little bit different. We have, well, not really that much different. Following along a line, we have talked a lot about mental health, about discipline, about leadership, about you can't heal the things you hide. We've talked about so many different things. Following along this line of progression of us getting our thoughts under control, our emotions under control, becoming the person I believe that we are meant to be in life, in business, in relationships. And today I want to talk to you about another topic, and that is grief. We usually say the title of today's show is Good Grief. And those of you that are my age will remember that from Charlie Brown. Everyone used to say that. Whenever Charlie Brown did something wrong or someone did something or they were just unhappy with something, they would always say good grief, right? We usually say these words when we're frustrated, right? When things aren't going right. Maybe your computer glitched, it locked down, it crashed. Maybe you're having printer trouble. How many of you have ever had printer trouble? I go through printers like changing shoes. I'll wear them out fast. And that's okay. And they can be so frustrating. We're just like, good grief. How could this day get any worse? Isn't that just the worst? My printer ran out of ink or I have to clean the printhead every day. Your day falls apart. I tried to get so much done today. My wife and I ask each other at the end of the day when I pick her up from work, how was your day? And we go through it and we process the day, what's going on and what's still to happen for the remainder of the day. Good grief. Someone pulls out in front of you on I-40 here in Amarillo and they're only doing 45 miles an hour, maybe 35 miles an hour when they enter the freeway and you're doing 65 and they pull in going slow and there's no way around them. And you're like, oh my goodness, good grief. But this morning, I want to ask us, as people are tuning in to watch the show, like, love, share the show, don't be a schmo, right? But this morning, I want to ask us this different question. Is there really such a thing as good grief? Where did the term come from? Can we grieve in a way that honors what we've lost without losing ourselves in the process? And that's what I want to talk to us about today. Myself and you, I think we can all grow from this because grief isn't only about death. A lot of people think that grief it only applies when we lose somebody in our life, and that's not true. We do grieve people. Don't get me wrong. We grieve relationships. We grieve people that we are losing or have lost in our life. We grieve marriages that have failed, friendships that have failed or quietly went away, businesses that we used to have, maybe a career that you used to have that went away. We miss the homes that we used to have, the places we grew up, maybe a church that you used to attend, dreams that you had. Children growing up, there's been an insurgence of the church hurt movement all over social media because people are becoming so judgmental and hurt with this me first movement that we think if every church isn't seeker friendly and catering to the emotional needs of every member, then the church has done something wrong. When that's simply not true, we need to grow up, learn how to handle ourselves like adults, healthy, well adjusted adults, and move forward in life. Sometimes your children grow up. Our parents get older and they leave our lives. We even grieve former versions of our own selves. And just because you choose to leave something doesn't mean you don't grieve leaving it. It absolutely means, I believe, and that's the topic of the show today, good grief. I believe that moving forward, we need to grieve those things from the past in a healthy way. But remember, moving forward isn't the same as moving on. Those are two different things. Moving on kind of just says, I'm just putting it behind me. But moving forward says, hey, it mattered. It changed me, and I'm going to honor what happened. But I refuse to die or stay in the same place I was when that happened, where something else ended. Today, we're talking about good grief, how to honor what was, how to process what hurt, maybe hurt us or hurt in the moment, carry the good forward from that, and then keep living, because I believe that's what we are called to do. Because what? When comfort ends, courage begins. So make your move. Good grief. People already commenting today. Good morning, Miss Tammy Joe. Great to see you back on today. Marlene, my dear friend. Good to see you. Marlene is amazing. Tammy Joe came to the coffee shop a couple of weeks ago and picked up her one thing cards, her card deck that she won here on the show. Actually, I think we may still have some of those we need to give away. The core values cards. I've got a list of a shelf of merch of different things behind me that people, when you like, love, share the show, right? You can win a gift. We did Kingdom Team T-shirts, embroidered T-shirts a couple of weeks ago, and I said that two lucky people that shared the show, like, love, shared the show, are going to win a T-shirt. We actually sent out T-shirts to 6 people that day. Different people that like, love, and shared the show. And I just appreciate that. So there are some of you have already received your t-shirts. Some of you, they're in the mail and on the way. So that's awesome. Good to see you guys watching. Miss Gina, my dear friend, good to see you watching today. So, good grief. What are we talking about? We've just gone through that in the intro. Is grief a good thing? Can it be? Absolutely. And we, of course, have the old, today, the standard format, 4 points. And we are going to jump right into point number 1. When talking about grief, every area of life, there's something that we can grieve and probably need to grieve in the proper manner. Point number 1, if something mattered in your life, it deserves to be grieved. Some of you have been apologizing for grieving something that mattered to you. And maybe it may not have been as important to someone else. And in passing, you have said things like, I should be over this by now. I can't believe I'm breaking out in emotions during this conversation. And we have suffered a lot of loss in our life. And my wife has lost both of her parents. Those of you watching the show, many of you have lost parents, family, friends, family members, loved ones, relationships, businesses, whatever it is. And for no specific reason in the middle of conversation, you'll just choke up, you'll get teary-eyed, and you're having this memory, and you will make that statement, I don't know what's wrong with me. I should be over this by now. Other people have it worse than I do in my life. Maybe it was a family member or a friend that we lost. A lot of people just recently lost a friend here in Amarillo. A lot of people have passed in unexpected accidents, cancer, different things that have happened to people, and the town, those that knew them and loved them, grieve. And sometimes we say those kind of things. Well, maybe so-and-so, I shouldn't be grieving because someone else has it worse than I do. Their grief is more current than my grief, and I should grieve with them and not grieve for myself. Or it was just a job. Or maybe you've sold a house because you had to. You were losing the house and you had to sell it, and you're grieving the loss of the home that you lived in or grew up in. Or sometimes you say, that happened years ago, and every time I think about it, why do I cry? Why do I get emotional? Or why do I get angry? Every time that emotion rises, we try to shove it back down because you've decided your grief isn't legitimate and you don't deserve to grieve that anymore, right? That's happened to many of you watching the show. That's tragic, Tammy. Your best friend just lost her husband. Absolutely, very, very tragic. I'm so sorry to hear that. I've heard stories of people here just lately in the last couple of days also that have lost a loved one. Stories of personal friends that are going through divorce that have lost different things in their life, and it is tragic. And I have to say this, if it mattered enough for you to love it, it matters enough for you to grieve it. It's just true. Grief isn't always evidence that something was wrong or something is wrong with you. Sometimes grief is simply evidence that something had value. And if something had value, if it mattered, it deserves to be grieved. In the book of John, chapter 11, verse 35, it says Jesus wept, right? Shortest verse in the Bible. Shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. Think about the context. Jesus knew the story, and we're talking the story of Lazarus. Lazarus was Jesus' dear friend, and he died and had been dead for days. He was in the grave, and Jesus finally got there, and Lazarus' sisters were upset and knew that if Jesus had been there, he could have healed Lazarus. He would have lived again, and it would have been okay. They would not have lost their brother. But Jesus took his time to get there. And it literally says Jesus wept. And the story goes that Jesus didn't weep because he knew that Lazarus died, that he was already in the grave for days. He wept because of the lack of faith that was experienced in that moment. He knew Lazarus was live again. He knew resurrection was within his power and it was coming. But he also knew of his power and what he was fixing to do. So he stood still in the pain of the sisters and the pain of the people that loved Lazarus and wept because of their unbelief. Knowing when you know inside there is a tomorrow, it doesn't invalidate the pain you're feeling today. All of that happens, right? And mourning is for a season, but joy comes in the morning, right? Ecclesiastes 3 verse 4 says there is a time to weep and a time to mourn, a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. I can't read my own notes here. And that's okay. We become comfortable with the dancing, but uncomfortable with mourning. How many of you have watched movies and the people, especially in other countries, they all dress, they used to call it sackcloth and ashes. That means you don't put on anything attractive. You cover yourself in ash and you cry and you mourn for that person. Or they have these giant days of mourning where they hire professional people to come in and cry for you, cry with you and mourn that person. And then as soon as that season is over, we say, okay, we're done, back to work. And we rush people when they're in a season of mourning because their grief makes us uncomfortable. We give cliches when people pass away or something ends. And sometimes people simply need someone to acknowledge that what they went through mattered to them. And they are now mourning the loss of something that was valuable. It may not have been valuable to us, but if that person is valuable to us, we mourn with them because their grief isn't a neat staircase we can climb up and say, okay, we've reached the top and we're done. It's the place where we have to get in alongside of them and mourn with them and help them pass that. Okay? Business loss, relationship loss, loss of a loved one. Grief is not the easy trail that you just get to walk along and then move off. You may feel strong this morning and then hear a song this afternoon that takes you right back 20 years into your grief, right? I've shared the story on here and I can share stories of my own personal life because the things that I go through or the things I have gone through may help you. But over 25 years ago, my oldest sister, Debbie, was murdered. We believe, everyone in the court system basically believed they knew who did it. It took them 10 years to indict the person that they believed who did it. And in the case of a murder, if they don't have overwhelming evidence, then they have to acquit that person. If there's a shadow of a doubt that they are guilty, they have to let them go. And that's exactly the case of what happened. And this particular person that we believe committed the murder, his own attorneys fired multiple times and they passed multiple polygraph tests. And the judge, the sheriff, the detectives, all of the people involved believed that they were guilty and they got away with it. But how do you grieve the loss of your sister knowing that potentially that her murderer is still alive? And those are conversations I've had with my parents when my dad was still alive and my mom. And my mom taught me years ago that she had forgiven the person that we believe murdered my sister. Who my sister was, everyone says I'm like my dad's twin, younger twin, and I still believe that. People told me that even this week, and I get that. But of the case of all five of us siblings, my oldest sister and I were the most alike. We both wanted to work at a very young age. We wanted to make our own money. We were both singers. We loved to sing for the Lord. We were involved in church and ministry and all things crazy and funny and honorable. We wanted to do that. Debbie and I, we did. It does not mean I love my other brothers and sisters less, but when Debbie left us, it made a huge impact in my life. And it's one of the things that now, nearly 30 years later, between, over 25 years, I'll just tell you that much. I can look back on and reminisce and get melancholy and become emotional if I dwell on it. But I have to remember the times that we had together, the last things that I said to her, the last time we went out there when my baby was born and we got to visit her. I think my oldest daughter was a year old and we had a good time. And she loved me and I loved her. And I can help other people through that kind of a loss because it happened to me. When people say, you don't know what I'm going through, I can say, hit me with your best shot. And I almost guarantee you, I have been through, or a close friend has been through it. And many of you are in the same position, right? You've been through a lot. So you can help people through a lot. So as we go through these different things, I have been fired from one job 40 years ago. I can talk to someone who's lost a job. I have fired multiple people. I've never been divorced, but everyone I know in my life, besides my parents, just about, and a couple of relatives have been divorced. Multiple family members and friends. Most of you have been through divorce. Okay, so we've been through things, so we can help the people through things. But you hear a song, you watch a movie, or you see a commercial, you smell a smell, and all of a sudden you're brought back to grief. You see a photograph, you're reminiscing. A phone number you can't bring yourself to delete that's still in your phone. Maybe it's a voicemail from a lost loved one that's been in your phone for 10 years because you can go back and listen to that voicemail and hear their voice. Maybe grieving well begins this way. Maybe grieving well begins by permitting myself to say, this mattered to me and losing it hurt, but I can't live there forever in the grief. I have to honor the truth of that. If it mattered enough to love, it matters enough to grieve. I need to, if I have not finished grieving that, I need to remind myself that I need to grieve, then turn the page. That person, that thing, whatever it is that you lost, mattered. It needs to be grieved. It matters enough to grieve it. Then, point number 2, missing it doesn't mean you're meant to go back to it. And I 100% believe this with all my heart. I don't need to go back to grief. I can miss something from the past and still know that leaving was the right decision. You can miss a person you should not reconnect with, right? I was in my garage this morning and I was reminded of this very fact because it had rained a couple of days ago and I have a fire pit, a metal fire pit in my backyard. And I've had a friend years ago. And one day we were talking about fire pits and there was water in the fire pit. He goes, when you get that fire pit home, you need to drill a hole in the bottom of it with your drill. So whenever it rains, water can run out and it won't rust out the bottom of your fire pit. Because years ago, I previously had a fire pit and it rusted. And I looked out in the backyard this morning. I was drinking some coffee and I'm like, there's water in the bottom of my fire pit. So what did I do? I remembered that comment, that instruction from a friend of the past, went into the garage, got my drill and drill bit, and I went out there and drilled a couple holes in the bottom of the fire pit, drilled the water, drained the water out. Now my fire pit is going to last longer. I can miss the person, but I know in my heart I do not need to reconnect with that person, right? You've learned things from people. You have experienced things with people, but it does not mean you are meant to go back and reconnect with that. When you've set a boundary and you've been led to set that boundary, you don't go back and rekindle that. You mourn, you grieve, you put it behind you, and you turn a page, right? You can grieve a marriage that you lost or that ended, and it's over. You can miss the friendship while recognizing it no longer belongs in your future. It's part of your past. You can drive by your old house and feel something in your chest, even though you love where you live today. I'm a realtor. That is so true. When people walk into a home and they just get emotional and they say, oh my God, Patrick, this is my house. I feel it. And then 5 years later, they're selling it and they move into a new home and they love it, but they still remember the feeling they had in that home, especially if it was your first home. First time home buyers really are a blessing to me because that person who never thought they could own a home now get to experience that feeling of being a first time homeowner, having something that they actually own. We just experienced that again last week with some friends, helping them buy their first house in middle age. Missing what was the last house, the last relationship, the last marriage isn't always a mandate to go back to that. We are called to move forward. Grief psychology uses the term ambiguous loss. And ambiguity. Oh, it's a word we can take or leave, right? if you catch the drift of that. That ambiguous loss, we use that term for losses that don't always give us a clean break. It doesn't always give us a definite ending, a date, a timeline. Sometimes it's a gradual loss, right? Sometimes the person is still alive, but the relationship is gone. Sometimes you grieve the relationship, but that person has passed on. Sometimes that business. Remember the restaurant we used to own. Man, those I have some friends that have had multiple restaurants, and they think about the old one with fondness, but they're happy to be involved in the new one, right? Sometimes it's a relationship. Sometimes your name is no longer on the door and you don't even own the business anymore. I've been partners in some great businesses. I've owned a couple of businesses. I still have business cards to businesses I used to own. I still walk into some businesses like Sherwin-Williams, and I need to buy some paint for a rent house or a flip house or some house. And they go, "Hey, do you want that to be under Amarillo House to Home?" And I'm like, sure. And they're like, you still have the same phone number? Still do. Do I own Amarillo House to Home anymore? It was a remodeling company I used to own, and I did that for a couple of years. Enjoyed it and still have fond memories of the homes that I remodeled, tiled, drywalled, painted, counters, things that we did. And was proud of that work. And I still have some business cards. Do I want to go back and do that again? Absolutely not. My name is still in their computer, but I don't even own that business anymore. Sometimes your children are healthy, building lives of their own, but you're still remembering them when they were a little girl or a little boy. And you want to go back to those days and say, man, if I could just go back to those days, so many things I would do differently, right? And we grieve that time, but we can't do that. We have turned the page to where we are now, right? But you still miss that little kid. They needed you for everything. And now they're grown up and they don't necessarily need you anymore. And you're feeling this melancholy for that. Here's a Ken Lee joke. My dad used to say that he dated a girl and he broke up with her, but she was melancholy. And you're going to groan when I tell you the punchline. He said she was too melancholy. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, she had a head like a melon and a face like a collie. So I broke up with her. And now y'all are going to laugh and groan. But that was my dad. That was Ken Lee. He was always doing these kind of belly groan jokes, the king of the dad jokes or the corny jokes. We're like, Dad, that's horrible. But we remember those and we move on, right? Here's where we get confused. We can't interpret grief as regret. I don't regret having young kids. I don't grieve that they're not young anymore. I have moved on and it's part of life and we need to move forward, right? Good morning, John. Great to see you watching again today. Sometimes we say to ourselves, well, if I miss that feeling, if I miss that, maybe I made the wrong decision. I don't agree at all. No. Sometimes you're simply acknowledging that chapter of your life in the past and you know that it had meaning. Otherwise, you would not be remembering it so strongly. In the book of Genesis, chapter 12, back in the Old Testament, Abraham was called to leave his country, his family, his father's house, and move forward to what God had ahead for him. And he challenged and questioned him multiple times. God, he called him in front of the burning bush and said, dude, go, 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 go. Not the burning bush. Sorry. He had to move towards what God had ahead. The calling was forward, but moving forward did not mean the past had no value. Yeah, that was Moses. You're allowed to thank God for the season he's no longer asking you to live in. And thank him. Thank him for that. And be glad that we have moved on. And he helps us heal from that. You can appreciate people who walked with you for 10 miles without demanding they walk the next 100 miles. We thank that person who helps us through the grief, helps us grieve and move on. But a lot of us have this nostalgia for the past. And here's a writer downer. Nostalgia is a beautiful visitor, but it makes a terrible landlord. It's good to revisit that memory, but you cannot take up residence in it again. Moving forward, visit the memory, honor the memory, learn from the memory, but don't move back into a chapter that's already ended. Missing what was does not always mean you're supposed to go back to it. I believe that wholeheartedly. And then moving on to point number 3. What you don't grieve may follow you. And none of us want that. I want to get firm with this. I've told a joke in the last point I want to get a little more serious with us. Some of you don't grieve. I'm one of them. Not well. I do not grieve well. This show today is for me, and it's for you. I push grief down inside. I am strong, resolute. I don't cry, even though I cry a lot. And we just push it down inside. We don't grieve. We bury ourselves in our work. We stay busy. We start another project. I was tempted to start a bunch of projects this morning, and I'm already in my mind. I'm going over a lot of things I'm going to be going through and doing in the near future because of life circumstances. Projects to keep my mind busy. I have a couple of boxes here in the corner of the office from when my dad passed away 5 years ago. We went through and sold mom's house, and we shipped home a bunch of boxes of family photos. A couple of family members know that I have them, and I would love to sort through some of them. And I still haven't been able to get the time or make the time or bring myself to do it, but they're still here. I have projects, things that I need to do. Some of you, it's the next deal, and I'm working on multiple deals today. When the show is over today, I'll be traveling to another town, working on some deals, trying to get some properties under contract. So we're always doing that, but we do that to keep our mind busy, so we don't have to. We're going to go make another deal, so I don't have to deal with what I'm going through. Right? We get into another relationship. We go bury ourselves in church work or service to other people. We tell jokes. We say, "I'm good. I'm good. How you doing? I'm good, bro." And we keep moving fast enough that hopefully the pain doesn't catch up. But ungrieved loss has a way of following you, and if you don't deal with that or learn to grieve properly, it's very unhealthy. Psychologist William Wharton described mourning as an active work, accepting the reality of loss, the reality of what is, processing your pain, adjusting to life after the loss, and finding a way to carry meaning while continuing to live in peace, health, and well-adjusted life. It's important. In other words, there are parts of grief you have to participate in, physically and mentally. You have to get involved in your own grieving. Good morning, Miss Mary, my friend. It's so good to see you on here today as well. The book of Psalms, chapter 34, verse 18 says, "The Lord is near to those who have a broken heart." I believe that scripture is read almost every funeral, especially to people that were people of faith. The Lord is near to those who have a broken heart. In Psalms 147 and verse 3, he says, "He heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds." God is so truly faithful and consistent in coming to us and helping us in times of need. But how do you bind a wound someone refuses to admit even exists in their life? Some of the anger you're carrying. I've had to talk with friends lately about anger issues. And some of that anger they're carrying may not be about the person actually that they're even mad at. It's the anger they're carrying because of something else in their past that they kept hidden. Remember the show a couple of weeks back? What you refuse to expose, you cannot heal. What you keep hidden, you can't heal. So some of you need to let this anger go. You need to grieve over something that you've lost in the past and move on. Some of you need this need for control in your life may come from a season when everything was out of control and you never dealt with it. Some of your distance from loved ones may come from the last person who left your life. Some of you overworking may be an attempt to prove you didn't fail in a past business, right? So you pour yourself into work and say, this time I'm going to succeed. That's not going to happen to me again. Everything that we learn from isn't necessarily a mistake, right? You may have had a failure, but if you learn from it, is it really a failure? Or is it a stepping stone to a better you, right? Grieve that. Admit it happened, and then move forward. Don't let that past failure define you. The people in our present lives should not continually pay for losses that happened in our past. They just shouldn't. They don't deserve it, and it's not fair. Here's a practical exercise. I would like for you to write down 4 statements. Those of you that take notes when you're watching the show, write down 4 statements. And the first one being, I lost. Fill in the blank. Second, what I miss the most is, fill in the blank. The third statement, what this taught me is, fill in the blank. And then the fourth, what I choose to carry forward is, and then fill in the blank. And you can write those down now and fill them in after the show. You don't have to do that now, but write down these four statements. I lost. What I miss is. What this taught me is. And what I choose to carry forward is. And then go back and name those. And you can actually do that repeatedly for different experiences you've had in life. Name them. Don't dramatize it. Don't minimize it. Just be truthful with yourself. Tell the truth, because what you refuse to grieve doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it just changes clothes and it shows up somewhere else in your future, disguised as something else. What you refuse to grieve today may quietly govern how you live in the future. And I don't want to be that guy. I don't want you to be that guy. I don't want you to go through this in the future. I just don't. My brother Bruce Wilson, good to see you watching today as well. Miss you, man. It's good to see you on here. And then point number 4. And this is a good one. Honor the chapter. Then turn the page. I think that's what we're called to do. The goal of grieving well isn't forgetting. It's not. We don't want to forget. Only God can forget everything, right? And forgive. He throws our sins and our past and the things we give to him into a sea of forgetfulness as far as the east is from the west. Why do we carry the things that God forgets? Why do we carry the past grief that God is trying to show us how to let go, right? The goal of grieving well isn't forgetting. It's learning how to carry meaning from that forward without allowing the loss to stop our life. Grief researchers talk about meaning reconstruction. What does that mean? Meaning reconstruction. Well, it means rebuilding your understanding of what happened in life, and sometimes rebuilding your understanding of your own identity after significant loss in life, whether it is a business, a relationship, or a loved one. When something major ends, you may not only lose the person, you may not just happen to lose that circumstance or that relationship, you may lose a lot of who you were connected to that, right? My identity was wrapped up in that. And a lot of us do that. We identify ourselves that way. Good coffee. Cody and Gina brought me some coffee back from their trip to Florida. Some great coffee beans. And I ground some of them up before the show. Good coffee. Love it. Thank you. But we do. We attach ourselves. We identify ourselves to the things that we have been through. We wear them like a badge of honor. And we ask ourselves things like this. What if I'm no longer married? Who am I if I'm no longer the owner of that business or the owner of that company? Who am I when my kids don't need me the way they used to? Who am I without mom? Who am I without dad? Who am I without my child? I have friends that lost children 25 years ago. The pain of a mother losing a child early. Great friends that have lost children. And I don't think that was ever intended. And I think that those are accidental things and attacks of the enemy. And what do we do? Who are we when we go through that, right? What if it's the ministry family that you used to be a part of? Who am I without my church home? Am I still the same person if I'm attending a different church? Who am I without that same title I used to have? That dream I used to have of the leadership role I was walking into, or the grooming that I was undergoing to be the person that I thought I was going to be. Who am I when I'm no longer there or involved in that? Sometimes grief requires us to rediscover who we are, or in extreme cases, it requires us to rebuild who we are. But you don't do that by throwing away that whole chapter that you went through. You have to honor that and grieve that. But sometimes you do. You go through a period of rediscovery, a little self-discovery. Sometimes you go through your character cards. What are my core values? Who do I really believe that I still am the person that I used to be? And do I just need to rediscover who that was, or do I need to rebuild who that is? And say, today, moving forward, I'm going to grieve what happened, and I am intentionally recreating me into the better version of me that God wants me to be. And I don't do that by throwing away the past. But that chapter ended. So I need to learn the lesson from it. I need to gather those memories, enjoy those. We can file those memories away and remember them fondly, bring them back out when we need them. I was listening to a video yesterday with Alison Krauss. Some of you know who Alison Krauss is. She's an amazing singer, musician, does bluegrass. Her version of Nobody Answered When I Called Your Name and Ghost in This House, and a lot of those are amazing. Probably one of the most angelic voices in the world, and I admire Alison Krauss's talent. And in this interview, she was talking about old songs and records and things that she remembered. And she goes, I don't ever want to forget those, but I file them away for when I need that emotion in the future. And I need to be reminded of where I was and what I went through. And it gives me the fond memory of how I moved forward, how I ended up moving on and carrying the memory, but grieving and getting rid of that part of it. Take the lessons, the memories, the love, the wisdom, the scars that are actually some of those battle scars that are now badges of honor. The stories that we have that we tell to those about what we went through to help others who may be going through the same thing. We take what God taught us. We carry the good forward. In Joshua chapter 4, the children of Israel crossed the Jordan River, and God instructed them, take 12 stones and build a memorial. That's an English word, a memorial. But it says an altar, a marker, like a great memory enhancer. So when future generations would walk by, they would say, what do these stones mean? What does this big stack of stones mean here? And the people could remind them of what they went through and retell that story. And this is who we were. This is what God brought us out of. And he led us to this great place. And that's what a lot of us need to do in our life. We need to remember that. We need to grieve that, build an altar, but not an altar of coming back to cry over that, but a reminder of what God has brought us through and where he is taking us to. God didn't tell Israel to move backwards to where that was and say, just stay here and just stay in this moment. He told them to keep remembering while moving forward. And if they walked back that way again, they would have the memory. That's good grief. Maybe you keep the pictures, right? I've got boxes of pictures. I've had to ask other family members what some of these old tintype photos I have, who they were, but there's no notes on some of them. It's like, I don't know. But if we don't keep the memory, tell the story, but do it in a healthy way, cook grandma's recipes, right? How do we learn and continue our traditions and our good memories? If we flush everything from the past, we need to learn how to grieve it properly, take the memories and move forward. Take the lessons from that failed relationship and learn how to be a better version of yourself. Build the next relationship better. Build the next business better. Maybe you simply say their name and smile when remembering someone who has passed. And you can talk with friends and say, remember so-and-so? They're like, yeah, oh man, those were crazy times. I'm so glad we're not there anymore, right? Honoring something doesn't require us to remain trapped in the moment that we lost it. The chapter mattered. The people mattered. The experience mattered. It did. It really did. But your book isn't finished. We need to learn how to honor the chapter, carry the lesson, and keep turning the pages forward. As we close this morning, I want to think about something you've lost. The things I said on the paper. Maybe it's a person. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's something you're going through right now. Maybe it's a dream you had, and you realize now that God is leading you in a different direction. Maybe it's a business. Maybe it was a season of life that you went through, and you would give anything to experience that feeling another time with that person, with that business, with that level of success. And you say, if I could just go back there, man, I would give up anything in my life. But we have to learn that's not what God has called us to do. We don't run from the memory today. We honor the memory and we turn the page. We say that mattered. We say they mattered because they did. Obviously, that's why I remember that. But then we also say, I was changed because of that. I'm a better man. I'm a better person today because of that. And I'm thankful. I'm grateful for what I went through. I'm grateful for the relationship I had with that person. And sometimes you'll be angry. Sometimes you will cry. And if you need to, be angry. And if you need to cry, cry. If you need to find someone to tell that story to, tell that story. And hopefully that's a person that you know, love, and trust, and they can remember that with you fondly and help you through the grief and help you with the memory. And remember this, this is a writer downer. And I have to go through this all the time. There's no trophy for pretending you were never hurt. There's no trophy for being a tough guy. There's no trophy for being the strong woman who gets bitter because she's been hurt so much. There's no trophy at the end of life for that. You die a bitter person locked into your past, and God has a better plan for you and a better plan for me. There's no trophy for being strong. Be strong for the people you need to be strong through. Don't miss the point here. I'm begging you. There's no trophy for you pretending you weren't hurt, for you pretending you don't need to grieve, for you not pretending that mattered to you. There's no trophy for that. You don't win the war. You're not a better person. You don't win the race if you simply control your emotions better than the next girl. Okay? Some things deserve to be grieved, not because they were bad, but because they were beautiful. Not because you lack faith, but because you loved that season, that person deeply. Good grief doesn't erase the past, puts the past in its proper perspective. And I believe that's what today's show is for, to help us all gather good perspective on grieving. You don't have to erase yesterday to embrace tomorrow. You don't have to forget the past to move forward into your future. Remember, honor what was, carry what was good, release what you can't change, and keep moving forward. I think it's very important. Hello, Ralph, my good friend. Good to see you watching today as well. Because remember, if you're still here, your heart is still beating, there are still people that we need to love. There's still people that you need to affect. There's still stories that you need to tell. And I believe God is telling us how to do that in a healthy manner. There will be mornings you haven't seen, sunrises you haven't seen. There are going to be resources, and this is one I wanted to add in here, resources that need to be refilled. And it's hard to refill those resources, right? Time, money, energy, faith. It's hard to rebuild those resources, refill those when you're living in past hurt, past grief, past mourning that you have not chosen to address. And there are still chapters of your book that haven't been written. Maybe your whole book hasn't been started yet, and that's what you need to do in the future. But for today's message, honor the chapter, carry the lesson, and in the words of Bob Seger, turn the page. It's that time. We've reached the end of today's chapter. Thank you guys for showing up today, spending a part of your Wednesday morning with me on Midweek Motivation Live. Remember our motto here, stay focused, right? Stay disciplined, keep walking in your calling, and remember this. What do we say? When comfort ends, courage begins. So make your move. Turn the page. I love you. I'll see you next week. I really will. You know me. I'll be back. Bye-bye.